Welcome to BevCam's production of Conversations with the Candidates. I'm Marshall Handley, your host for this segment. Today we'll be talking to Matt St. Hilaire, a candidate for Council at Large. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Marshall. Appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Let me ask you the first question, and this is a big one. Why are you running for office?
It is a big one, and that's a question I get a lot as I go door to door. And really, the answer is simple. I think this is a really big election for Beverly. We're going to be electing a whole new generation of people who are going to be making some big decisions for our city. And I think I have some good experience to add to the council at a time when we have a lot going on.
Okay. What do you think are the most pressing issues facing Beverly in the next term and in the next few years?
Yeah, I think when I look at the issues, I think it's really three big issues that I would focus on. One is the major projects that we have going on in the city. You look at the new middle school project, you look at the waterfront development, you look at the future of Brimble Avenue. I think there's a bunch of projects that are just getting started that the next group of people will be making some big decisions on. The details of these projects haven't really been worked out, and I think the next group of councilors, the next mayor, they'll be the ones deciding what happens with these projects and how these things get developed, and that will really shape the future of our city. In addition to that, a couple of my priorities would also be improving transparency. I do have a background as a social media manager, and I think that could be put to good use as a city councilor. I think you saw with the Brimble Ave project that that's a big issue right now, that people want to feel part of the process, and I think I could use my background to help with that. And then thirdly, maintaining fiscal responsibility. Mayor Scanlon's been in office for over 20 years. He's been the leader of our city, and I think he's done a pretty good job managing a complex city budget. I would focus on representing the taxpayer and making sure that whatever we do and however we do it, that we maintain a fiscally responsible approach.
What would be at the top of your agenda if you're elected?
Yeah, it's really those three things. It's continuing to push these projects forward, to making sure that the residents have a seat at the table in determining what happens with these projects. And it's making sure that as these projects get done, that we're looking out for the taxpayer and doing it in a responsible manner.
How much time do you think is required to do an adequate job as a city councilor or councilor?
That's a good question. I certainly the campaign has taken a lot of my time, and I would expect that as a city councilor, it would be just as demanding. There's the meetings, obviously, that you would need to go to, but for me, the real big issue is going to be taking a proactive approach to engage residents, to talk to residents about what their concerns are. And I would take whatever time I could. I mean, I do have a full-time job, and I do have a family. But if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to put everything I have into it.
Okay. For people who aren't familiar with you, what would you say your style is?
My style is, again, very, very engaging. I'm someone who wants to listen to people. I'm a leader. Natural leader. I've been involved in politics at the statewide level. I've understood, how government works, and I've really worked to put people together, build coalitions of support. That's something I've always been responsible for at whatever job I've been a part of. And I think government works best when everybody's involved. You need the public involved, and you need to work together. I would take a collaborative approach.
You say you've been involved in politics at a statewide level. Mm-hmm. What have you done?
Starting as a college intern, I worked for Paul Cellucci on his successful campaign for governor in 1998. That really started what's been a 15-year career for me in the Massachusetts political arena. After graduating, I went to work at the governor's office. My first job out of college was working on constituent services. I was handling questions and problems that constituents had and helping them navigate through the bureaucracy of state government. Really learned a lot about how that process works. And then from there, I sort of rose through the ranks in the political arena, moving up the ladder and ultimately working on a bunch of statewide and national political campaigns, including people like, Charlie Baker and Richard Tassay, Kerry Healy, serving as political director and advisor for those candidates.
Now, the city council and the mayor are responsible for making decisions on a roughly $105 million budget. What specific skills do you have that you feel qualify you to make those to participate in the budgeting process?
Well, I think number one, it's again the experience I've had working in government. I have a familiarity with what agencies and what governments spend money on, the types of responsibilities that they have, the fundamental duties that governments are responsible for. Number two, I have managed budgets on the campaigns that I've worked for. I've been responsible for budgets. I obviously have a family budget, and sort of understand budgeting from that point of view. And then thirdly, I'm someone who has a fundamental belief that taxpayer dollars should be spent wisely and efficiently as possible. So I'm someone that would take a look at the budget from a taxpayer's point of view. I'm someone that pays property taxes myself and want to see those dollars spent wisely.
We hear the phrase fiscal responsibility. As a matter of fact, I think you've used that. What does it mean to you?
I think it's just that. It's using tax dollars as efficiently as possible. Taxpayers pay a lot of money every year. They want to see that those dollars are used wisely and efficiently before government comes asking for more. And I think we need to take a look at the budget. How are we spending those dollars? Are there opportunities to save money anywhere? And really making sure that we understand that these dollars, they're not just coming from anywhere. They're coming from hardworking people who pay taxes every day.
Okay. What are the most critical factors in balancing the budget in your view, and what are the leverage points?
Well, there are certain pieces of the budget that are set by statute that you really are have to negotiate ahead of time and are really off market for any type of playing around with. But and then there are things that we can look at. We've talked a lot about regionalization. I know here in Beverly and around this area. How can we look and look creatively at the dollars that we are spending and trying to use those as efficiently as possible. So I think regionalization is one area. And then we've got all these big projects. How do we fund these on an ongoing basis?
Mm-hmm. What do you see the top 2 or 3 budget issues for the city in the next couple of years, the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, one thing a lot of people aren't talking about is the unfunded pension liabilities. Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge issue. What does that look like, and how are we going to fund that on an onward-going basis? And then, secondly, a lot of these big projects, a lot of the projects like the new middle school that are going to take $40, $50, $60 million to get done. Mm-hmm. How are we going to pay those moving forward as well? And how do we do all that without a Proposition 2.5 override, which I don't think anybody wants.
Okay. What is your overall need, or what is your overall view, on the need or potential for development in Beverly?
I think, I'm someone who supports development as a way to sort of grow the economy, grow the tax base. So I think it's absolutely essential, especially if we want to do these major projects. We're going to have to grow. But we need to grow responsibly. When we look at the Brimble Ave project, for instance, I'm someone that supports development along Brimble Ave at some level. What that ends up being, I think we need to work with our residents and work with everybody to figure that out. We're all in this together. It's not the city councilor's job to just decide that. I think we all need to work together, and councilors are supposed to represent the people, so I think we need to work as a community to figure that out.
Well, the Brimble Avenue project, they're talking about it as a phased project. Any thoughts on phase 2, the overpass?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do support development. I do look at that area as one that probably is a good place for development. Mm-hmm. Phase 2, in the fact that it can create a new exit in which people can come and go from 128. Is something I probably would support. I think we need to figure out what the development looks like. What is the development? Let's include the residents in that discussion. But yeah, it's something I think we need to figure out.
Now, what are the issues in your mind that need to be considered when you're reviewing a development proposal or development project?
I think we need to bring everyone to the table. I think we need to look at the budget from an economic standpoint in terms of what else are we doing in the city to grow? Mm-hmm. Is it this project in a vacuum, or are there other pieces to the puzzle? So that's number one, and then I think we also need to include the residents. What concerns do they have? Traffic is obviously a big concern.
Sure.
How is it going to impact their quality of life? I grew up in North Beverly and saw the development along 1A and how that impacted quality of life, and I don't think anyone really wants to repeat that on Brimble Avenue, and I don't blame them for that. And so I think that needs to be part of the equation. We need to take a look at environmental impacts. That's certainly part of the equation. And then we need to look at all this as a whole and say, is this worth doing? Is this the right thing to do for Beverly?
In your mind, what are the real tourist opportunities for Beverly? Can we be a tourist destination like Salem or Gloucester or Newburyport, or what's real?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think Beverly has a long history that I think we can point to. I grew up here, and part of my interest in getting into the political arena was Beverly's history and Massachusetts' history in terms of the Revolution. So we should look at historical opportunities. We have a pretty thriving entertainment and theater community as well. You get the North Shore Music Theater, the Larkham. What's going to happen with Cabot Cinema? You look at Montserrat College of Art. Briscoe's got a great auditorium. Is that something that we could, if we're going to end up moving the middle school, is that something we could, rehab into something? So I think there is some arts and cultural allures that we could create there. And then you look at the waterfront as well. Is that something that we could develop in a comprehensive way to attract people to come to Beverly? You look at Salem and people come to the train, they get off there and they go and they do all sorts of things. Beverly's one step further, and
Sure.
Can we create something where people will want to come?
Let's talk about the waterfront. What do you think needs to be done to develop the waterfront, and how high a priority would you give that?
I think it's a big priority. I mean, everywhere I go, people want to know when the waterfront's going to be developed, when there will be a restaurant that they can go to on the waterfront, like a Gloucester, like a Newburyport, like a Salem. And I think, it is something that, frustrates people. You drive by that McDonald's site. I mean, I remember going there as a kid, and, you cross that bridge every day and you see the McDonald's site sitting vacant year after year, and that's the welcome to our city. So I think it is a big priority. I think we need to figure it out. I know, there's been some movement on that recently, but I think we need to take a comprehensive approach. It's not just a Black Cow restaurant. It's the waterfront as a whole. It's the Bass River area. I know I was at a recent meeting where they were talking about some planning around the Bass River waterfront. So, let's look at all of that. I know there's an issue with the abutter to the Black Cow about fairness and the DPA restriction. So I would want to take a look at that DPA. Is that something that we can reconfigure? Is that something that we could potentially lift? I know other cities and communities have discussed that and done that, but I think we need to have a more comprehensive approach to the waterfront.
The McKay School has been sitting empty for several years.
Yeah.
What would you do with that?
I think we need to sell it. I know the mayor has looked at that, and the dollars just haven't added up up until now. I think we need to take a new approach to do that. I know that there's some asbestos issues I've heard, and there's some sort of issues with developing that property. So I would try to look at it and see what it can be done from private development and see if there's an opportunity there again. I don't know that it's a site that makes sense for any of our public uses at this point, so I would certainly look and see maybe it can be some sort of residential or commercial use.
Okay. A new police and fire station, is that a priority for you?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I met with former Chiefs Ray and the interim chief Nagrati, and they gave me a tour of their facility. I'm fortunate I've never actually been in there myself, and it's obviously
probably good news.
Yeah, it is good news, and it's sort of certainly an inadequate building. It was built in the 1930s. And whenever you hear, police and any public safety official talking about, inadequacies in doing their day-to-day job, that's a problem. I think we need to make sure that our police and fire have every, facility and every equipment they need to get the job done. They're protecting us, and so I would certainly look at that. I think that's something we need to probably get done very, very soon. But that, again, that talks, that leads into the whole scope of what is the master plan here. We've got a new middle school. We've got all these other projects. Where does that fit in, and how does that get done?
What would your priority be?
Well, I think the new middle school is number one. I have a friend that's an assistant principal at Briscoe, and I've had a niece go through Briscoe, and my sister-in-law is have long conversations with her about it, and they're making the best they can out of the situation. But again, I've toured Briscoe. It's an old facility, and they're dealing with windows that are stuck open and leaks and things that they shouldn't be dealing with. They should be dealing with how do we educate our students the best possible way, and so I think our students deserve better. So I think that is the priority.
Well, let's talk a little bit about schools. As a city councilor, you're going to there's going to be some tension over budget.
Sure.
You're obviously going to have to work with the school system. What do you think are the biggest challenges that are facing the Beverly school system, and what would you try and do to solve?
Well, number one, they're currently searching for a new superintendent, so we're going to have again a change in leadership at the superintendent level. I would look forward to working with that individual as well as the school committee to figure out what their needs are. Enrollment is on the rise. I think that's partially due to the new high school and the attraction that is in the area. And then if we get a new middle school, how does that impact that? Are we going to do a 5th, 6th grade and 7th, 8th grade to try to alleviate some of the enrollment issues at the elementary school level? I know that's one approach that they're looking at, and certainly a concern. So I would say budget always is a big issue. We want to make sure we have the dollars that they need to do their job. Professional development is an issue. We want to make sure our teachers are the best that they can be. And then I think we need to look at enrollment and making sure that we can try to keep class sizes down, and how do we manage that all at a time when we've got a lot of big projects going on.
We're almost out of time here. One final question, and what would your answer to viewers who ask be, why should I vote for you?
It's a good question.
Give me a reason. Give me some of your background, and let me know why it is that you should be the one that I vote for City Council at large.
Well, it's a good question, and thank you for having me on, and thank you for BevCam for hosting the show here. Number one, I think this is a really big election for our city. It's a once-in-a-lifetime generational change in leadership that we're having here. In just a few short weeks, we're going to have a new mayor. Mayor Scanlon was elected when I was a junior in high school. And not only that, we're going to have 3 of the 9 city council seats turning over at the very least. There's competitive races in other seats, so it could even be more than that. And so this type of leadership change is big for the city, and it's coming at a time when we have a lot going on. We have a new middle school, we have a waterfront that everybody wants to see developed. We have the future of Brimble Avenue that's hanging sort of in the lurch here. And so I think this next group of leaders is going to be the ones making decisions on the details of these projects. And so I think it's really important who we elect on November 5th. I feel like I have some good experience to add to the table that will help me get things done for our city. I'm a Beverly guy. I grew up here. My wife also grew up here. We're both Beverly High graduates. We've been married 8 years. We have 3 young kids, and we've decided to settle here. We're not going anywhere. This is our city, and we love it, and want to invest in the future here. So from that standpoint, certainly want to see that the decisions get made in the right manner. My professional background, I attended Villanova University, earned a degree in political science. I then went on to work in the governor's office under Governor Cellucci. From there, rose to the political ranks here in Massachusetts. Worked in some high-pressure environments. I've seen how government works. I've been able to help, constituents navigate the bureaucracy of state government. Learned really how the political process works. And I've developed a network across the state of local officials, state officials who I can then go to and ask for help as a city councilor, help getting things done for our city. And I think that's a tremendous qualification and tremendous experience that I can bring to the table. I also have private sector experience. I've worked for the last 3 years as a corporate recruiter and social media manager. And there's been a lot of talk right now about improving transparency in government and social media use. I'm a huge proponent of that. As city councilor, I would use social media as a communication tool just as I have in my campaign, and I will push for further use here in city government. And my track record has also been someone who's fought for the taxpayer. I've worked for campaigns and for issues that have been, fighting for the taxpayer for the last 15 years. I understand, what it's like to pay property taxes, what it's like to work hard and see your money being used inefficiently. And so I want to make sure that whatever we do, and we do it in the right way, that we get things done in a fiscally responsible manner, as we talked about, and that we don't have a Proposition 2.5 override. I've gone door to door. There's no appetite for that in the city. People want to see their tax dollars used the best possible, and I think I'm someone that can be a voice and leader in City Hall for that.
Just briefly, has anyone identified, what are the issues that have been identified for you going door to door?
Yeah, the main issues have been taxes. They've been the Brimble Ave project. They've been the middle school, the waterfront. These are the issues that people have on their forefront. Opening up city government, more transparency. People want to be involved. And all of these are areas that I think I can add value to the City Council, and I would ask the voters for consideration for one of their 3 votes on November 5th.
Well, that's terrific. That's about all the time we have, Matt. We'd like to thank our guest, Matt St. Hilaire, who is running for City Council at large. Thank you very much for coming in. My name is Marshall Handley, and on behalf of BevCam, thank you very much for joining us.